Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's Tuesday, day 15 in the Lori Vallow murder trial. What an emotional day. I'm going to thank everybody who donated tomorrow, and your music fact of the day, Shine On You Crazy Diamond by Pink Floyd, is amazing. Just listen to it coming in. But I've got to run back to the courthouse to do Banfield. So I'm going to get this in the books and out there. So we left off yesterday with FBI analyst Nick Balance on the stand, and that's where we pick back up today. They had a visual of Google location history for Chad's phone. So today was super emotional. Summer Shiflet, who is Lori's sister, testified briefly. She mainly was on the stand while they played a phone call between the two of them just shortly after the kids' bodies were found. Now, if you followed this case for a while, you know that Summer has initially went on the record on national TV and supported Lori and kind of dismissed any inkling that she would hurt the kids or that Alex was the family hitman and things like that. I have a lot of compassion for Summer because this was before they found the kids' bodies when she did that, and she didn't know. I think for me, if somebody in my family were accused of something so horrific and something that is so unimaginable, I would probably be defensive and say, no way. They've changed their tune clearly since then. On Sins of Our Mother, their mother, Janice, admitted she was wrong about how she felt. And it was clear with this phone call today with Summer that she is devastated and angry and every emotion you could think of in a situation like this. So Lori was very focused on Summer. She looked at her a lot. She was really trying to make a connection. She would kind of raise her eyebrows. I couldn't see Summer, so I don't know if that was reciprocated. But Lori definitely looking over there more than she ever has. And we're going to get into that phone call in just a minute, but we're going to pick back up where we left off yesterday with FBI analyst Nick Balance on the stand. And they were showing a visual on Google location history for Chad's phone on September 9th, the day Tylee was buried. Now, on the day Tylee was buried, there were multiple texts from Chad to Lori. There were outgoing calls. One was at 11:45 in the morning. The multiple text messages were between 10:35 a.m. to 12:20 p.m. Alex's phone, they looked at actually 3 phones that day. At 11:45 a.m., there was an outgoing call from Chad to Lori, and then after that, Alex calls Lori. Chad gets an incoming text from Lori, an outgoing text from Chad to Lori. They're all communicating on these key days. Chad made a phone call to Alex also, and the cell tower that picked up that call would not have covered his residence. So we're not sure if he was off the property or what. We're going to move to JJ's burial, which is September 23rd, and the times and the pings of what was going on with these 3 phone wise. From 3:59 a.m. Now this is around the time JJ likely was murdered, to 8:35 a.m. there were numerous outgoing text messages from Lori that started at 3:59 a.m. and Alex from 9:01 to 9:41 a.m. he was at the townhouse. At 9:25 a.m. there was an outgoing call from Chad to Alex. Also, from 9:30 to 9:45 a.m., Lori and Chad had outgoing and incoming text messages between the two of them and an incoming call. So the day JJ was buried at 9:45, Alex's phone was within Wi-Fi range of Lori's apartment. By 9:49 a.m., he is moving on Highway 20 traveling north. So on Chad's property, this is between 9:55 and 10:13. At 9:55, Alex's phone was pinged just north of the Daybell residence with a 15-meter margin of error. Then a minute later at 9:56, he's northeast of the small pond. That's the area JJ's body was eventually found in June of 2020. There was a 4-meter margin of error. So we know he was right there. At 9:57, he was somewhere in the center of this property. Now, remember, Chad's property is 3 to 4 acres. There was 100 meters of a margin of error with that ping. And then at 10:02, he was very close to the location of where JJ's body was found. For Chad, between 9:30 a.m. on the day JJ was buried and 10:16 a.m., he used 2 towers and 2 different sectors. There were 8 communications between Chad and Lori during this time frame as well. So Alex, from 10:12 to 10:20, he was located near or around Chad's residence. And then at 10:20 a.m., he's consistent with moving going south towards Rexburg. From 10:13 to 10:17, they focused on 3 phones for Lori, Alex, and Chad. At 10:16 a.m., 3 outgoing text messages sent from Chad to Lori. Then at 10:13, y'all can do the math because me and math, we ain't friends. 545-second phone call between Alex and Lori. Alex's phone did go back to Chad's on different occasions. It was less than 10 in total. He didn't see any definite location in the backyard, but that also could be due to that margin of error as far as the pings. Now we're going to jump ahead to October the 8th, the day before Tammy Daybell was shot at by Alex. So Alex had 18 Wi-Fi connections between 2:59 and 3:37 p.m. He was also at a Walmart. So the day Tammy is shot at, there were texts between Chad and Lori. At 9:57 a.m., Chad texts Lori, gonna stop by the store to get that other number working. And then at 10:26 a.m., he says, I will call now from a 401 number. That was a Rhode Island area code. We talked about that yesterday. So 10:21 a.m. to 10:27, 2 phones were being used by Chad. At 10:27 a.m., there was a voice call from Chad to Lori. This is the day she shot at Tammy. Between 1:11 and 2:22 p.m. on that day, there was an incoming call from Lori to Chad and multiple text exchanges between Chad and Alex. From 12 p.m. to 1:23 p.m., Alex had 18 Wi-Fi pings at Lori's townhome. Then he goes to his own townhouse from 1:23 to 2:37 p.m. 2:42 to 3:14 p.m., Alex is moving towards Idaho Falls. He was at the Sportsman's Warehouse, possibly. It was hard to know with that margin of error, but if he wasn't there, he was close because we know from 3:42 to 4:12 p.m., he was at the Sportsman's Warehouse. So what about his phone on the day Tammy Daybell was shot at? 4:47 p.m., GPS shows movement towards the Daybell residence. At 4:51, he's at the Daybell residence. And at 4:55, he's traveling east away from the Daybell residence. At 4:58, he's moving west on the road Chad lives on. And then at 5:03 p.m., he's pinged in Sugar City, Idaho, which is between Rexburg and Chad's residence. So from 5:16 p.m. to 11:53 p.m., Alex's phone is pinged at his townhome. I'm sure he probably just left it there. There were just numerous texts between Alex and Chad and Alex and Lori between 5:28 p.m. to 10:31 p.m., which would put that shooting right in the middle of these communications, I believe. She had been at a church group meeting and had frozen meals that they had prepared, or I think it's like the food prep club or whatever. So Chad texts Alex at 7:13 p.m. And then Chad communicates with Alex 6 times, beginning at 7:30 and ending at 10:29 p.m. Man, it is so sad to think. Poor Tammy thought this was just some kid pulling a prank, and it's really some psychopath that has murdered Charles, murdered 2 children, and took a shot at, or is going to take a shot at Brandon Boudreaux the next month. So now we're going to move to the day before Tammy Daybell was murdered, which is October 18th. So she was murdered at some point the 18th into the 19th. From 11:02 to 12:20 p.m., Alex's phone is at Lori's townhouse. There are 2 outgoing texts from Chad to Lori and 1 incoming text from Lori to Chad. From 1:36 p.m. to 8:54 p.m., Chad texted with Lori, and then there was outgoing calls and texts from Chad to Alex at 8:44 p.m. Now, at 1:40 p.m. earlier in the day, Chad and Alex talked for over 2,000 seconds. Get your calculators out, because I'm not. Then from 9:35 to 10:55 p.m., multiple text messages between Alex and Chad. I hope, for goodness sakes, we have these recovered, and it comes in during the conspiracy part of Tammy Daybell's death, which Lori is charged with. So between 9:35 and 10:55 p.m., we just talked about the multiple texts between Chad and Alex. There were 16 of those, by the way. From 10:05 p.m. to 10:07, Alex's phone is moving from Salem Road to Salem Church. From 10:07 to 10:45, Alex is in a church parking lot near Chad's house. The witness reiterates Tammy was found dead the very next morning. Then from 11:34 to 11:36 p.m., Chad sends Lori 3 outgoing text messages. At 11:53 p.m., Alex calls Lori for 16 minutes. Now, remember, at this point, Lori is in Hawaii when Tammy Daybell is murdered. From 11:54 p.m. to 12:09 a.m., Alex is driving southbound on Highway 20. Now we're going to jump ahead to the 22nd. This is 3 days after Tammy was murdered, and this is when they're having her funeral and burial in Springville, Utah. And this is going to cover Chad's phone from 1:46 p.m. to 4:17 p.m. The cell towers closest to the hotel and the cemetery were the ones that were used. There were 4 incoming texts from Lori to Chad. There were outgoing texts from Chad to Lori and an outgoing call from Chad to an unknown number they were never able to figure out. So as he's burying the wife he murdered, he is on the phone texting and calling his mistress. December 15th, 2019, 12:25 p.m. That was the last usage on Tylee's phone. She was already dead at this point. There were 2 incoming messages using a tower from Kauai because Lori and Chad were on the island at that point. That was the end of direct. Mr. Thomas was up for cross, and he asked, what's so special about an FBI special agent? And he explains, the witness explains, you go to training for 6 months in Quantico, Virginia. And they're doing this with a lot of the cross is they're talking about their prior experience, the witness's prior experiences. And they talk about the GAR, which is something technical with cell phones. It collects RF frequencies given off by cell phone companies. When they do that drive, remember we talked about the drive where they drive the routes to see which cell phone towers are pinging their phones. They get the data and they put it into software, which then maps it out. He did this test drive in June of 2020 to see how far the coverage goes. This was in Rexburg and the surrounding areas, and it took them a week to do these drive tests. Now, I have in my notes here, Lori has been occasionally looking over at Summer and smiling. They need records from the cell phone companies to estimate a location for a specific day and time an area was visited. So if you have your Google account logged in, it's going to ping your location. You can opt out, but you got morons like Alex Cox who didn't ever log out of his Google. And good for us. It showed us where the kids' bodies were. So at least now we're on that road to justice. But you can opt out to where it doesn't track your location. Some of the towers have large areas of coverage, and Mr. Thomas points out there could be large areas where phones could be anywhere within that parameter, and the witness agrees. And Mr. Thomas asks if you can put anyone at Chad's based on cell data alone. He said he couldn't say for sure. The phone was only at the Daybell residence. So we're moving to the day of JJ's burial. Alex's phone was utilizing a Verizon tower. Chad's was using an AT&T tower. The witness said he can't put them in the exact same location on the property because the range could be miles apart. Now, there's 2 ways to get the contents of a text. Number 1, do a forensic download on the phone. Number two, looking at interactions between a carrier and the phone. And it depends on the records that the carriers maintain. For example, Verizon, they only maintain the contents of text for 3 to 7 days. Mr. Thomas asks if he has any location data on Lori and Chad, and he said he did not. He asked the witness if he knew how long Lori and Alex were in the area of Rexburg. He points out they only moved on September the 1st. And he asked the witness, can you make assumptions on their patterns of behavior of where they were and going and what they were doing? The witness says usually he'll look at a 30-day history to see if there's a pattern. From the standpoint to have more records would be the best in establishing a pattern of life. Back to Tammy Daybell's death on cross, Mr. Thomas points out that Lori was in Hawaii, and the witness agrees. Cross was over. Rob Wood was up for redirect GPS data for Lori and Chad. Is it possible to turn GPS off? The witness says yes. For instance, we talked about the Google opt-out option. So this witness was finished, not released from his subpoena because he may be called next. The next witness, Lori's sister, Summer Shiflet, who we've all been waiting to hear from. As Summer is sworn in, Lori gave her just a really big smile. She's asked, how do you know Lori? Well, she's my sister. She says that JJ and Tylee were her niece and nephew, and that she played a very active role in their lives. She first learned that JJ and Tylee were missing through the media in December of 2019. She hadn't been in contact with Lori at the time, didn't even know where Lori was. She said she's always had a close relationship with Lori. And when she asked Lori about the well-being of Tylee and JJ in February of 2020, after Lori was arrested in Hawaii, Lori said she knew where they were and that they were safe. That's going to come back and bite her with this jury. Summer said she trusted Lori, and she said when she said Tylee and JJ were safe. Summer was getting really emotional on the stand, and so we moved to June 2020. This is after the bodies were found. She said after they found the bodies of JJ and Tylee, she had no trust in Lori, and she knew she had been lied to. So they play a call between Summer and Lori on June 24th of 2020. Lori was the one who requested this. They said it was a video visit. We only heard audio. I'm not going to go through it all at 16 minutes. I have posted it on social media, and I will post it on prettyliesandalibis.org a little later this evening. The call starts off, Summer's crying. She says, how are you? And Lori says, not good. Now, Summer was screaming into the phone, crying, devastated, mad, angry. Every emotion you could picture came out in this phone call. And the grief and the hurt was very palpable. You could hear it come through the speakers. And this was very impactful on this jury because they were looking at Summer and they were looking at Lori. I have to say, this is the most upset I think I maybe have seen Lori, other than when she came in after lunch that day when she did not want to sit through the graphic photos. Summer says, I don't know what to say. I'm willing to listen if you want to talk. Lori says, I don't know what anyone knows. I've been in isolation for 2 weeks. Summer is sobbing, and she says, Tylee and JJ are buried on Chad's property. She asked Lori, did you know they were there? Lori says, I can't talk about it. Summer says, I don't know what to say. You know how much I love you and Alex, and I'm sick to my stomach, and you let this happen to them and threw them away like garbage. Lori says, you think I let that happen? Thanks. Summer says, I don't understand. I want to believe the best of you. I love you. I just don't understand. Lori said, you know me, Summer. Now, one thing that hit me, she said the same thing to Melanie Gibb on that recorded call. You know me, Melanie. Well, no, apparently nobody knew you. Summer said, that's what I thought. If you let that happen and them in the ground like a piece of garbage, we could have taken them. I mean, Summer says, I would have taken JJ and Tylee in a heartbeat. Summer says, I'm not okay. I loved them with all my heart. You have no idea. And Lori says, you have no idea because everyone just sees what's on TV. Summer says, this isn't TV. This is our conversation. Lori said, this is your opinion. So Summer says, tell me the truth. And Lori says, I would love to. Lori said, you didn't in December. You didn't in January or February before you were in jail. You didn't tell me Alex died, which I'm glad he's gone if he's a part of this. You've caused pain. And Lori says, you don't think I'm in pain? Summer's like, you were dancing on the beach in Hawaii. Lori says, ask the Lord. Summer said, there's nothing in scripture that's godly about hurting a child. They deserve a proper burial with family that loves them. Is selfish. I can't think of anything worse. This isn't the Lolo I know. You never got upset with your kids. And Lori says, I never did. Lori said, nobody in the world knows what I've been through. All you know is what you see on TV. Summer says, everyone in the world is deceived except you. Lori says, nobody has seen me on the floor crying for my children who I love more than anything. It's me, I, poor me. And the difference in the tone of their voices. Summer is panicked and angry and mad and upset. And Lori is just like, you don't know what's up. I mean, the jury really caught on to that because they were just looking at both of them as this call was being played. Although Lori wiped her eyes crying pretty much the whole time. Summer says, do you not think your mom, sister, and your son deserve to know the kids were dead? You're going to be happy without your family? I've loved you my whole life. It hurts me. There is nothing okay about this. Lori says, nothing about this is okay, Summer. At this point, Summer is angry, screaming, and crying. Even if you didn't kill them, you threw them away like garbage. I don't know what to say, but please consider you have been deceived. And Lori said, who loved and took care of them their whole life? Me. So it goes on. It's just kind of that back and forth, sort of the same things. Summer reminds her over and over, you were dancing on a beach in Hawaii while your kids were buried in Chad's backyard. Lori was crying. Mr. Thomas was up for cross. He apologizes to Summer that she had to relive that. She says, thank you. Summer is the youngest of 5 kids. The oldest is Stacy, who is Melanie's mom and is deceased. Now, so she names the siblings in order. Stacy was the oldest. Then you have Alex, then Adam. Lolly, who died at 6 weeks old. This was before Summer was born. Lori, and then Summer. There's 2 years between Lori and Summer age-wise. Now, Summer said she and Lori were close when they were growing up. They had friends in common, hung out a lot. Summer said they had a really good family. They obviously had their problems, but it was a lot of fun. They talked about Lori's previous marriages, which, by the way, Lori's family has never been invited to any of her 5 weddings, which I find totally bizarre and odd. Her first marriage, right out of high school, Lori was 18, didn't last. Second marriage was William, and that's Colby's biological father. Husband number 3, as we know, Joe Ryan, Tylee's father, who both of them, unfortunately, are deceased. And then Mr. Thomas points out that Lori protected Tylee and Colby from Joe, and she says yes. She says that she kept in touch with Lori once they were both married, and they live states away, which makes it a little hard. Also, Summer has 3 kids of her own. By the way, I'm sorry, this is Archibald on cross, not Mr. Thomas. My bad. And then it said on the phone call, Summer said you would never do anything to hurt your kids. And Summer said, you know, that's kind of what she thought. But she said that Charles and Lori were compatible and happy, and they adopted JJ. She heard Charles had filed for divorce through the media. She was part of Lori's life when Charles and JJ moved to Texas. This is back when Lori caused all the stink and got her family all to not talk to Charles. Everybody ignored him in spite of the fact that in hindsight, he was 100% right. But they weren't as close, but they were still in contact. They were close when the Vallows moved to Hawaii as well. She describes Tylee as beautiful, witty, talented in many ways. And she also says Tylee had pancreatitis as a kid, and she was kind of in and out of the hospital as a child. She said Tylee and Lori's relationship was good. Lori was a loving mom, and Tylee adored Lori. And I've seen this. I have seen Instagram posts by Tylee where she's saying that her mom's her hero. And when she becomes a mother, she wants to be like Lori. It's just so sad to think that Tylee never knew her mom was capable of such. Summer said Tylee was sassy and they'd argue, but Lori was patient with her. Summer never worried about Tylee and JJ's safety around Lori and can't imagine her sister wanting to kill or conspire to kill her kids. Summer is just crying and says she never would have thought that. She said that her and Lori were raised to believe Jesus was kind and loving, and Lori also taught her kids that. Summer heard Lori and Alex talk about multiple lives starting in late 2018, and that was new. We know that's kind of the time frame everybody who knew Lori said things got weird. They started listening to these podcasts, reading these books, and that kind of thing. Lori did talk about multiple creations to Summer. Lori told Summer in late 2018 or early 2019 that she had previous lives, and none of that made sense to Summer. She tried to believe it, but it just didn't make sense. And I put in my notes here that Lori looks broken with Summer on the stand, and she really did. This was maybe the most emotional I've seen Lori the entire trial. And I mean, for any normal person, it would be when graphic photos are being shown like they were at the end of court today, or that day they showed the graphic photos, or anytime they talk about her kids being murdered and buried. But it's when her sister's on the stand that I see more tears. Lori never talked to Summer about zombies, but told her she could cast out spirits and also about the light dark scales. She did not ever tell Summer she was the leader of the 144,000, and she never said anything about the Church of the Firstborn. It kind of makes me wonder if Lori was sort of testing the waters with Summer to see exactly what Summer would buy and what she wouldn't buy, or how receptive she was to it. Summer says she wasn't concerned with Lori's new beliefs as far as the safety of anyone went, and she didn't know what to think about it. So she doesn't know if concerned about these religious beliefs was the right word. She said she was close with Alex. He was a big brother. Sometimes he was hilarious and fun, other times crude and obnoxious. He would spend weekends playing with Summer's kids. She also said that Alex was in a car accident at 16 and suffered a brain injury. And to her, his brain never developed much after that when it came to making decisions and adult thinking and processing. But Summer says Lori changed, obviously, after meeting Chad Daybell, and they were finished with Cross. The state is back up, and when she was made aware Tylee and JJ were missing, Lori relayed to her she knew where the kids were and they were safe. So Rob Wood says, she lied to you about them being safe, and Summer said yes. So that was it. That was the last thing that the jury heard from her sister. She lied about the kids being safe. She was released from her subpoena. The next witness is Rick Schmidt Jr. He is a former employee of Rexburg PD, and his first involvement in this case was on November 4th, 2019. He found out other officers were conducting surveillance looking for the Jeep that was used in the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, driven by Alex Cox. So he went over to see if they needed any help, and he just kind of stayed in the area. So on December 17th of 2019, he was assigned to go with other detectives from Rexburg, Fremont Police Department, and the FBI to Springville, Utah, to interview Tammy Daybell's family to find out if they had any information on the whereabouts of JJ and Tylee. He got search warrants for a Venmo account for Tylee and Lori because they had gotten a tip there was activity on Tylee's Venmo, but however, there was different grammar, the emojis were off, and everything about those messages were out of character for Tylee, and we know at that point she was deceased. On January 8th, 2020, he got a video from Fremont County Sheriff's Office from the West Yellowstone West entrance from September 8th, 2019, which was the day Tylee was last seen alive. He was looking for any car associated with them coming through those gates, and they finally saw Alex's pickup truck, but it wasn't a good angle, so he requested more video from that date to get better footage. So he got it, and on one camera, it was from the B lane of the west gate of the Yellowstone entrance. Alex was driving the truck into the park. They got the license plate of that F-150, and you could see a passenger in the front. It looked to be a female, but this detective was not able to identify who it was. As Alex was pulling away from the ticket booth, he looked over his right shoulder into the back seat, and an employee waved to somebody in the back seat, so they're assuming maybe it was JJ. They searched local establishments for anything relating to the murderous trio group, whatever. February 2nd, 2020, he went to Self Storage Plus in Rexburg because they saw the video that East Idaho News, Nate Eaton, got of Chad, Lori, and Alex coming in and out of that storage unit at different times, sometimes together, sometimes alone. And they would take things from the unit and put things in. Americans spend an average of 90% of their time indoors. According to the EPA, indoor air could be 2 to 5 times more polluted than outdoor air, and in some cases, it could be 100 times more polluted. We take about 20,000 breaths per day. That's almost 3 gallons of possibly polluted air. Airborne allergens are the most common allergy triggers, such as pollen, pet dander, dust mites, and mold. Look, I love my animals, but they make me sneeze. But since I've been using Air Doctor, I don't have to take my allergy medicines, and I see a huge decrease in the amount of dust in my house. That's a win-win. What's the solution? Air Doctor filters out dangerous contaminants and allergens so your lungs don't have to. Air Doctor uses an ultra HEPA filter that's been independently tested to remove 99.99% of tested bacteria and viruses. The classic Air Doctor 3000 purifier is powerful enough to circulate the air in a 630 plus square foot room 4 times per hour. And the Whisper Jet fans are 30% quieter than the fans in ordinary air purifiers. So, Air Doctor comes with a no questions asked 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you don't love it, just send it back for a refund minus shipping. So head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code WhatTheWorld, and depending on the model, you'll receive up to 39% off. Let me tell you all about our sponsor of the week, Pros. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to hair care, and that's because your hair and your hair goals are completely unique. My hair is dry and frizzy. I wanted to get rid of these problems. Thanks to my personalized Pros routine, I can honestly say I've never been in more love with my hair. First, Pros asked me for my hair goals, which was smoother hair with color protection. Their in-depth consultation also asks about you as a person. Pros ask me really unexpected things like my age, hair length, do I get split ends, and even my zip code, so that Pros can factor in the environment my hair lives in. Next, Pros analyzed all my answers and handpicked clean ingredients to help me reach my hair goals. I use the Scalp Remedy, Clarify and Cleanse Color Extending Shampoo, and the Smoothing Solution Volume Building Conditioner. I also use the Boar's Hairbrush that makes my hair super smooth. My hair is completely different. The frizz is gone and it's so much softer. All their ingredients are sustainably sourced, ethically gathered, and cruelty-free. They're also the first custom beauty brand to go carbon neutral. If you're not 100% positive Pros is the best care hair you've had, they will take the products back, no questions asked. Pros is the key to achieving all your hair goals this year. Take your free in-depth hair consultation and get 15% off your first order today. Go to pros.com/whattheworld. That's pros, PROSE.com/whattheworld for your free in-depth hair consultation and 15% off. At the beginning of October, he saw Lori putting a box and a tote inside that unit. And on October 2nd, he saw Lori and Chad going into the unit, bringing in the Jeep spare tire and back seat from the Wrangler. Alex was not in the video. And on October 3rd, Alex and Lori were back and got the spare tire and back seat out of that storage unit. October 16th, he saw Alex come to the unit in his truck. He took boxes and totes, as well as what they call gun something. It's a case that holds a rifle. And Alex did come back to the unit on October 22nd. On that visit, he took a gun thing, it's like a cloth thing you carry a rifle in, I think, and a tote, and put that in the pickup truck. And on October 28th, he saw Alex take 4 gun, I think it's a scabbard, and totes from the unit. That day, Chad was with him. There were other days in October through November where he saw Lori, Chad, and Alex come in the unit at different times. So on January 1st, 2020, he contacted the Unified Sportsman Club's firing range. Alex, at that point, was the suspect in the attempts on Brandon and Tammy Daybell. They went to see if Alex shot at the range at any point, and they got records from this sportsman's club. There were times where Alex signed in the log to go to the firing range, but he didn't always use the name Alex Cox. He would use the names Alex or C. Quint. Now, CP Quint was what he had on his license plate. So the dates he visited this firing range, October the 7th, 2 days before Tammy Daybell was shot at, C. Quint, he used that name. On the 8th, the day before Tammy was shot at, he was there, used the C. Quint name. Then on October the 12th, he was there, C. Quint named, used. He was there again on October 15th, used that same name, and then the 18th, used the same name. He signed in as Alex Cox, though, on September 3rd of 2019. Now, this witness got search warrants on January 15th of Lori's care.com account, the Sugar City and Rexburg post offices, and also he was there June 9th on Chad's property when they found the bodies. He was assigned to watch Chad. At one point when the search dogs were on scene, Chad got out of the car that was parked in his driveway. And when searching where JJ was, Chad was facing, looking in that direction. Detective Ron Ball and Hermosillo went to talk to Chad. He went into his house and came out with a backpack. He got in his car, sat for a minute, then drove across the street to where his daughter Emma lived. They just lived across the street. He went inside Emma's house, and when he came out, he got in his car and left. That's when police pulled him over and he got arrested. And he also said that he was the one that got the search warrant for both Lori and Chad's DNA. The FBI collected that sample. He also asked for hair and fingerprint samples as well from both Chad and Lori. After Chad was arrested, the witness transported Chad to Fremont County Jail and went back to the scene. At the scene, he was tasked to help search the fire pit area and the pet cemetery. So, trigger warning, the rest of this episode is not pleasant. We're talking about what they found. So, he found teeth, burnt bone, burnt flesh of Tylee. The dirt was hard in one area, and it looked like fence post concrete had been poured on top of some of where the remains were. They had to get a backhoe to dig that up. They found more remains in a melted green bucket, and it was placed on a tarp along with the other remains they found. So up for cross, Mr. Thomas points out he was on the case 3 years ago and now works security for BYU, and that started December of 2020. They're talking about the videos of the storage unit in Rexburg. The report was written in February of 2020. And Mr. Thomas points out this witness had to refresh his memory a lot during his testimony and asked if it's because it's been a hot minute. He said he reviewed that footage a month ago. So the witness went to the Sportsman's Club to talk to staff members there. And Mr. Thomas asked, "Do you go there?" And the witness is like, "No." And when you sign in, it's on your honor. There's not any overseeing of you signing in or anything like that. Nobody's there to check you in, and you actually pay in a box. So Mr. Thomas asked if he's talked to anyone on the list who visited that day, and the witness said no. So Mr. Thomas says, "You're assuming C. Quint is Alex, but did not follow up." And the witness says, "No, I didn't follow up." Then we move on to June 9th. He says, "You found teeth, bones, and flesh. Where were you when you found these items?" And the witness said, "In the fire pit and the cemetery area, the pet cemetery area." And Mr. Thomas asked, "Is it best to use a grid search?" And the witness says, I don't know. He's asked if he was given boundaries, and he said no. And so Mr. Thomas says, "So you were given a shovel and told to have at it?" And the witness said yes. So cross-exam was over. The witness was released. And next up is FBI Special Agent Steve Daniels. He is the senior leader of the ERT team, and their role is essentially to handle the forensics in any case that they're on. He was involved in the search on Chad's property, and they were asked to come up with a search strategy for the June 9th and 10th search warrant, including the residence, the outside buildings, and the property itself. So, in preparation, about a week before, they talked to the local case agent and the police in Rexburg, the FBI lab in Virginia, and they came up with a strategy on how to process this search. He got to Chad's in the very early morning hours, and after a week of prep, he had 8 ERT team members with him, and they all had roles before they arrived. Somebody to take photographs, crime scene, sign log. Somebody was responsible for that. Preliminary survey of the land, things like that. They had found priority areas during their week of prep for the search. They had aerial and satellite imagery showing the fire pit from the satellite images, as well as pings from Alex's phone that showed them the areas they needed to zero in on. They did not know where the pet cemetery was on the property. There's a little dog statue, but we also know that Tammy's sister was able to identify the pet cemetery area by an aerial photo of the property. Tammy had showed her where it was at some point in the past. And they also knew through pings that they wanted to look in that pond tree area where JJ's remains were found. This was all very graphic photos, testimony, that kind of thing. Lori did not look at any of the remains. There were some tears from her sister Summer, her uncle Rex, and her cousin who were there in attendance. So Rob Wood, who was up for direct on the prosecution team, he had the witness explain a Faro scanner, and that takes a scan using thousands of measurements in the area. They used one that day that they found the kids' bodies. It took 40 360 to 60-degree scans over those 2 days. They used that in court today. It's very interesting. I have not got to see this in court before. So a total station tool is another measuring tool, which is a point to point. So you're shooting in one item or area, and they can tell it what to measure. It's kind of like a surveyor's tripod. If you've seen them on the side of the road, that's how he explained this is. They took drone photos on June the 9th and did a survey of the property at the conclusion of that search for the day. Now, at this point, Lori constantly is writing in her legal pad. It's almost like she tunes out when this gets real. And when I mean get real, the reality of why we're here, her kid's dead on Chad Daybell's property. So there was an objection by the defense about this Faro scanning coming in. Mr. Thomas just wanted to question the witness, and he asked what training this witness specifically has on the Faro scanner. And so he sat down with their Faro scanner operator, and they went over what was of interest in this scan. He also met with operational projects unit from the FBI lab. Mr. Thomas asked who was operating what that day. And also he asked if he compared the drone footage to satellite footage. And the witness said that the FBI gave him satellite images that week of the search. So ultimately he didn't object to this coming in. And the exhibit started out showing just a basic overview, showing where Lori lived in Rexburg, Chad's residence, Walmart, Salem Church, the wireless revolution. All those were pinpointed on this, what looked like a Google Map screen grab. And so the morning of the search warrant, the teams staged at a local church. There's an overhead of Chad's property pre-search being shown at this point. And the witness is pointing out all the different structures on the property, such as the house, the barn, the little shed. They show photos of the outside of the residence. They show a photo from the window of the bedroom Chad sleeps in upstairs. And from Chad's window, you could see where JJ was buried. Facing east from Chad's bedroom, you can't see where Tylee was due to a barn and a tree in the way, but it's still in that line of sight if those things weren't in the way. They also show a photo from the kitchen window, and you can see towards those burial sites as well. And it's very haunting. As much as Tammy Daybell loved kids, and it's all haunting, but for her, she had no clue from the time these kids were buried on her property until her murder that these kids were out on that property. And it's something that bothers me to my core. There are 2 bedrooms in the house. They show photos from those windows looking onto the property. You can see both burial sites from the bedrooms. They also go to showing photos of the fire pit area before any of the searching was done. You can see disturbances in the ground from this angle. In the background of the pet cemetery, you see the fire pit. So they're not right there together. There's a little bit of distance between where Tylee's remains were found and that fire pit. So they made a grid in the area of the pet cemetery. If evidence is found in the grid, it helps them know exactly where things are being found. 2 people were sent to assess the fire pit itself. They knew the kids were missing in September, and in June 2020, they weren't sure if anything had changed with the fire pit within those months, but they did find ash outside the fire pit, so they made a grid. The fire pit, they show a photo of that as it was before it was disturbed. It had fresh limbs on top of it that had leaves, and there were cinder blocks in a circle that made that actual fire pit. So they show progression photos. It kind of reminds me of when they showed the progression of when they exhumed Tammy Daybell's body. The first layer in the fire pit is removed. They use rakes, shovels, and sifters to start processing the fire pit and look for evidence. So what they do is they scoop dirt into buckets and sift it, and then the contents fall on the tarp. In doing that, they collected bone fragments, organic material, and they found a Pura Vida chain. Rob Wood told them to wait on that, and they found cloth and fabric that they weren't sure was associated with the case. They show progression photos of that being excavated, and as they processed the scene, the accelerant smell was very, very strong and overpowering. They took a soil sample to test that as well. They found the chain inside the fire pit by sifting. They also found a silver charm that has a little wave on it, and my daughters have the same necklace bracelet, and they're showing how they made the grid. While setting up the grid, they found the charm. Actually, it was kind of in the grass area, that charm, but the chain was in the fire pit. They're showing close up of that charm, and Rob Wood asked for a break. So we took a little break, and then every bit of evidence that was seized over the 2 days they executed the search warrant, they turned all that over to Rexburg PD. So for Tylee's burial site, we see more excavation from the backhoe. They initially found dog and cat remains. And at this point, the reason they used a backhoe is because they didn't find anything in that pet cemetery area initially. They started with hand tools and go layer by layer. So they had found the animal remains with hand tools, but no human remains. They did have an anthropologist on site who was helping them confirm whether these are human or animal remains. And also the backhoe covers more ground, so they use that just to be able to excavate more area each time. So trigger warning just for the rest of this. I mean, because it got real fast. And they show their first clue that they were in the right area is they found a piece of vertebrae. So they stopped using the backhoe. He could smell the odor of human remains decomposing at that point. They found another bone and excavated with hand tools again. Like I said, Lori looking down, writing, not acknowledging anything on the screen. They show another photo of a hole in the dirt, and they show bricks uncovered, and that was in the vicinity of where they found Tylee's burial site. The cinder blocks, they were stacked up against the barn area, I believe, and also they looked to be the same as what that fire pit was made out of. The odor got stronger the more they excavated. If you remember, Detective Hermosillo testified they could only stay down there a couple of minutes each time because the odor was so bad. They show another photo of some bone that was found, and it is on top of what they would eventually find to be her burial site. The first pieces of Tylee that they found really just led them to find her grave. So when they came upon a much larger bone, they knew they were in the right area. And then they show photos of more excavation. They weren't sure at this point if the remains were human or animal, but the forensic anthropologist said they were human. As they were digging, they found a really hard substance like concrete in the dirt, which made going through the layers very difficult. And they ended up and had to use a backhoe to pull that concrete layer away from the remains. And in this photo, they're pointing out charred and pink flesh in the picture. They removed the pieces of the remains and they're showing a close up of those burned and charred remains on a blue tarp. So they show the burial site at the end of day 1 where they have done all they can do. And the remains were put in a body bag and turned over to the coroner. So then they show a far off shot of the blue tent and the backhoe. And that was their end of the day photo of this is how we left it. And they come back the next morning. They show another photo from the next day of an overall picture of that burial site before they start again. Orange stakes are seen in the ground, and this represents that parameter around where her remains were found. The agent points out the sifters in the photo and says that's the ones they used to try to get evidence. They sifted both burial sites, by the way, not just Tylee's. So if they see something significant, they will stop and decide if they need to take a photo or a Faro scan. A photo showing the excavation where the concrete is shown, you see a deeper hole than, it's kind of hard to explain. It's like they've excavated and then it's higher right there. And so you kind of can see that green bucket under this hard area. And as they hit the hard area, they finally realize that this is a mass of human flesh and remains. So under the mass was the green bucket and a partial skull. Investigators were actually puzzled for a while. They had never seen anything like this. So they show a close-up of that mass of human remains with that melted bucket and the partial skull. At some point, they decided that they were going to lift that mass out, but when they did, it just all fell apart. Oh, man, it's just terrible, y'all. So the anthropologist and the coroner separated the remains for inventory of what body parts they had and how many were missing. Once this big mass was separated, then you started to be able to identify what pieces were inside that. And they show the pieces on top of the coroner's body bag. They show bricks that were believed to be on top of Tylee's remains, those cinder blocks. And remember, JJ had those large white rocks and wood paneling covering his grave. So after they collected the human remains, they would have the backhoe dig deeper and wider to be sure they got all the remains. And this was especially important in JJ's site because he was actually found first. And they didn't know where Tylee was at that point. They didn't know if maybe she was with him or anything, but they found JJ first and removed him first. Then, at the same time, they're obviously over there sifting through the fire pit. And they show what they found layer by layer with photos. So on layer A, they show a photo. It's really neat how this Faro scanner works. It tells kind of the depths that things were found at. And a 3D image of the burial site is shown, and it shows the lowest depth that remains were found. The mass that we just talked about was 2 feet deep, as well as the bucket it was 2 feet for the bucket and the partial skull. They also searched that shed and the barn area that day. They show a photo of that barn door just open from the outside before they even walked in and searched as it was found. So inside the barn, they're looking for any tools that could be used in the burials as well as anything used to dismember Tylee. And they saw a bunch of garden yard tools up against the wall. And they show photos of this. They ended up and took 4 shovels and a pickaxe, and you see a green bucket against the wall as well as 2 white buckets beside that in that picture. The shovels were dirty and they looked like they could have been used in a fire. After collection, they were given to the Rexburg Police Department. They show a close-up of the pickaxe, and you see what he calls material on that pickaxe. There was a close-up of 2 dirty shovels with possible ash or other things. They also show a photo of a saw, pruning shears, a hacksaw, and several wood saws. The tools were laid out in another photo, but not all of those tools were collected. There were more tools on the southeast corner of the garage. Some of those were seized. There was a shovel, 2 axes, a post hole digger, and a hoe were taken as evidence. Also, the bricks on the side of the small shed were collected because they were similar as the ones found with Tylee's remains. So we're near the end of the day, and they show a photo of the burial site where JJ was found, just of the overall area. And as we said, this was excavated first. And you see taller grass around the burial site, and in the center, the vegetation is shorter, and it's kind of like on top of a raised berm. You see a little dirt too, where the grass didn't grow right there in the middle. They show a close-up photo of higher vegetation and the burial site having that thinner vegetation. So then the next photo is after they've removed that top layer of grass. You see the hints of those white stones, and they are precisely placed according to the witness. Now, Lori looked at the defense monitor a few times when they started showing JJ's burial site. So I thought that was very odd. At this point, we went into recess, and we will pick back up tomorrow morning with the excavation of JJ's burial site and learn more about that search warrant. Just a very emotional day between the phone call with Summer and then just these remains. It every time it drives home what these poor children, what happened to them. And for those of us that have followed this case for a long time, or people who haven't, these are children who trusted and loved their mother. That's what you do as a mom. You protect your babies, and she didn't. And that's exactly what Summer said on that call today, essentially. Even if you or Chad or Alex didn't kill them, you threw them away like garbage. She called her out. I hope they find some peace tonight. Just a hard day for all the family in the courtroom. And my heart goes out to all of them. So that's it for today. I will be back tomorrow, and I will be back Thursday, but Friday, I will be back home to take my youngest to see Taylor Swift. So Kathy Russin is going to be in town from Law and Crime, my old friend from back in the Jodi Arias days, if you can believe it. But we will still keep you informed. And I may do Friday's episode Saturday because I'm not getting back from that concert to Greenville way past midnight. So I will try to keep you updated if I can. I'll be retweeting Kathy. You can follow at Law and Crime Network. I think it's Law Crime Network on Twitter. And I may just put that Twitter feed up also on the website so that you guys can follow along there if you don't have Twitter. Anyways, you guys have a good rest of your night. Send some good vibes to these family members that are having to live their worst nightmare and hear about the worst moments of JJ and Tylee and Tammy's life. And Charles Vallow will have his day too in Arizona. Hopefully she will be sent down there to answer for his murder sooner than later. All right, guys, we'll see you soon. Have a good one.